Good morning, dear Danubian people. Today, my fantastic colleague, Gustav Chomor, will be presenting for the third day in a row new possibilities for funding in the Danube Region Program. And today, on the agenda, we have new funding for protecting and preserving the biodiversity in ecological corridors and eco-regions. I only want to remind you that the questions can be posted through slido.com. Just before the starting, we share the slide with the passcode. In case that you missed it, then I ask you, Gusti, to show it once again.
Yeah, just a second. I would first of all, of course, I would like to welcome also all interested participants of today's webinar. I'm sharing the slide and screen, hopefully.
So please take the notes.
I would just like to ask a brief confirmation if my presentation is visible on the screen. Okay, thank you. So this is the Slido link that was mentioned, where you will be able to write your questions. And I'm starting now with the presentation. Today I'm going to talk about the specific objective of the new Danube Region program within the priority of greener low carbon Danube region that is addressing or focusing on protecting and preserving the biodiversity in ecological corridors and ecoregions. In my presentation, I will briefly give you some information what transnational cooperation is actually, some characteristics of the Danube region, also in connection to this thematic field, the related needs and challenges that were identified in connection to the or during the elaboration of the new program. And then I will present you the possibilities, the thematic focus of this specific objective, some potential type of actions that can be excuse me, funded throughout this program or within the program throughout this specific objective, as well as some aspects of project partnerships, some budgetary issues, and then some information on where you would be able to gain more information for in case you are interested in applying for the program or to the program. So briefly about transnational cooperation. This is an instrument of the EU cohesion policy that is supporting cooperation projects by financial means, cooperation that are going beyond national level and even beyond cross-border cooperation. And in this respect, targeting and addressing a geographically defined area, but a much broader area. In this case, it's the Danube region itself, and some relevant parts, depending on the project, and addressing such common needs and challenges that are relevant within this broad territorial area and which needs joint or harmonized solutions and cooperation. These programs, including the Danube Region program, is intend to complement the mainstream programs that are implemented on national level and providing some harmonized joint solutions for these challenges, as I already mentioned. And in this framework, it is expected that the cooperation partnership together with the target groups bring together policymakers, academia, research, civil society, and even private actors to find answers to these common needs and challenges. The Danube region was identified as a region of barriers by those elaborating or carrying out the territorial analysis for the elaboration of the new program. Somehow this is not surprising, since the region has the highest and the program area has the highest number of countries, 14, with the highest number of borders. And this also results highly fragmented political and administrative situation in this area, in this region. And in a more general way, considering the Danube region, it is quite heterogeneous and diverse in terms of natural environment, socioeconomic, and cultural characteristics. The EU measures provide strong cohesion with the accession and the neighborhood policies together. Some sort of possibility to improve and strengthen the integration of the Danube space, since it's not only divided by country borders of 14 countries, but actually the space is partly involves EU member states as well as non-EU countries. And the program with all these financial supports intend to contribute to the cohesion and integration of this Danube space. The specific objective and the funding opportunity I'm talking about is related to protecting and preserving the biodiversity in ecological corridors and ecoregions of transnational relevance in the Danube region. In this respect, considering the biodiversity and the environment of the region, it is quite colorful, like a mosaic of biogeographical regions, rich in biodiversity. It includes major rivers and mountain ranges, like the Carpathians or the Danube, the Tisza River, and which are important transnational ecological corridors. But this rich biodiversity and these ecological regions are endangered by many factors. Human interventions, the corridors are affected by fragmentation of habitats and ecosystems. The spreading of invasive alien species also raise threats for biodiversity, as well as the climate change impacting the conditions of ecosystems. Beyond that, in different parts of this big geographical area, weak management capacities and skills for transnational ecological regions were also identified as a challenge of the region. And many of these challenges are actually have impacts beyond country borders, which then need some sort of cooperation on a broader territorial scale. And for this, transnational cooperation can give a solution and added value beyond those activities or those efforts made on national or local level. The focus of this specific objective from territorial point of view is on a broader transnational ecological corridors, as well as on transboundary ecological regions, and water habitats, wetlands along major transnational rivers. So from geographical point of view, the focus is mainly on broader spaces where these challenges and needs that I presented and which were identified are relevant beyond borders and needs cooperation on a broader territorial scale. From a thematical point of view, the focus is on improvement of ecological connectivity between habitats, nature protection areas along transnational relevant ecological corridors, transnational conservation and restoration measures for endangered umbrella species, strengthening networks of cooperation in ecological regions and among protected areas of broader transnational areas, as well as ensuring resilience and adaptation to climate change to reduce its impact on biodiversity. Some words about what is actually financed by the program. Due to the characteristics of these transnational programs, the Danube program is financing mainly kind of soft type measures like improving policies and institutional capacities, like by integrating strategies, action plans, or establishing policy and sectoral dialogues, or having organizing trainings for capacity building, harmonizing management processes for a broader territory by joint or harmonized approaches, as well as elaborating and pilot testing joint solutions that can tackle those challenges identified, like, for example, creating databases or elaborating and applying monitoring tools or conservation and restoration methods. What is expected that in a project, activities are mixed in a reasonable way, but at the same time, the projects shall have a clear thematic focus, so not targeting too many things, but in case it is addressing this specific objective, then it shall make clear what is actually the concrete thematic focus of the project. It is expected that projects have a territorially integrated approach in a cross-sectoral way. So not only the environmental nature protection side is present in the projects, in the partnership, but based on the specific challenge, this shall the project developers shall think over which are the key stakeholders, the key actors, which sectors are necessary to ensure the improvement or solution to be achieved. And these groups shall also somehow be involved in the project implementation. As well as in a general or more in a horizontal way, it's important to take into consideration the potential negative effects of climate change and the project activities are expected to also created this way that can also address this issue. From a thematical point of view, I give some examples of activities which can be financed by the program, like improving, manage, monitor and ecological connectivity along transnational relevant ecological corridors, including potentials, exploring the potentials of green and blue infrastructure developments and solutions for effective defragmentation. Although here I would like to emphasize that the program is not financing, in fact, it has no proper resources to finance big infrastructure developments. It's rather more the preparation for such preparatory activities can be made, or on a limited scale, on a pilot basis, some, as I said, limited scale, some activities might fit in case their transnational relevance can be demonstrated. Revitalization and rehabilitation of water habitats along major transnational rivers or river systems can be another type of activity. Here again, it's potential. It can be explored the potential of restoration and reconnection of floodplains and wetlands. Again, with the note that big infrastructures are not really financed or not financed by the program. Establishing management and cooperation networks of transboundary ecological regions and protected areas. Once again, we are talking about broader spaces where to establish such networks or strengthen such networks. Resilience of habitats and ecosystems of transboundary ecological regions and their ability to adapt to climate change impacts. Among others, this could be reached by eco-friendly land use systems or landscape management, soil protection and restoration measures, and so on, to address the issue of climate change. Solutions in prevention and control of invasive alien species and management of their priority pathways. Again, here we talk about broader transnational spaces where some joint efforts are needed to address these issues, so not local cases, but we are talking about here broader spaces where the challenge is the same and it needs some joint solutions, or monitoring, conservation, restoration, and management plans for endangered umbrella species like sturgeons or the big carnivores of the region. Again, on a broader territorial scale, so not some local activities, but addressing the challenge of a broader space. That's why, for example, sturgeons, which are migratory fishes, as well as one of the umbrella species in the flagship species of the region. A good example, since the situation and the problems of sturgeons need joint efforts from different countries along the main rivers of the Danube. What is not supported? In general term, that is valid for the whole program, not only to this specific objective. If the proposal or the project idea is not able to demonstrate that the specific challenge has transnational relevance and it needs cooperation on a broader territorial scale and joint efforts, then unfortunately it it's not the Danube program where this project idea would need to look for financial support. Another aspect, but that's more objective specific, that in case the project proposal is not focusing on the transnational relevant geographic area, be it an transnational ecological corridor or a transboundary ecological region. So a broader territorial space, which I already kept repeating in my presentation, that's what is to be addressed by projects of the Danube region. I also mentioned that projects predominantly focusing on infrastructure development, not development infrastructure and works, cannot be financed by the program. The same stands for project idea where the predominant focus is on some technical solution development in case that solution would not be reach that phase that the target users are also applying this solution. So it's not enough to elaborate something nice and innovative, but the project shall also ensure that what is elaborated is useful as well as applied by those for whom it is meant to be created. The program also cannot finance projects that are purely focusing on research and data collection if that is the outcome of these researches and collected or databases are not translated into applied solutions or policy strategies plans. So if you need additional data or to research some things in connection to the challenge you try to address, it is possible, but of course, within the project, you shall go further on and then use the outcome of these activities and turn it into some solutions, some methods or tools, or build a broader territorial strategy or action plan based on these outcomes. Then this can fit the program. From thematical point of view, I would like to mention that on the previous slide, it was mentioned that the floodplain restoration, or at least exploring the potentials of floodplain restoration, can fit this specific objective. But please consider that in case this activity has a focus or intention more on flood protection, then it's better to address this 2.2 specific objective. Or in case this floodplain restoration and restoration would focus on improving the water quality, then it's better to address the 2.3 specific objective. Here, what shall be the focus is on the biodiversity of wetlands and improving and protecting the biodiversity in relation to floodplain restoration and of the wetlands. That's what fits. The other focuses would fit some other specific objectives. And then some words about the partnership. When the documentations of the first call for proposal will be available, there you will see what are the eligibility criteria for the partnerships, for the projects, and for the different partners. One of them is the minimum requirement that at least 3 financing partners from 3 Danube region program countries shall make up a partnership, and one of these shall come from an EU member state. I would also, at the same time, would like to highlight that this is just a minimum requirement, since a proposal having only 3 partners from 3 countries would have very limited capacities to have sufficient impact on a broader territorial scale on a Danube region level. So such project would never be supported because there will be much stronger partnerships and projects that can have a more appropriate and broader impact. So when you plan your partnership, then it's the starting point of creating the partnership shall be the actual challenge that you intend to address. You shall consider with your partners in which geographical area, in which territorial territories the actual challenge is relevant, and how much that needs a cooperation beyond borders. Then accordingly, when you more or less understand the geographical scope of the issue, accordingly you shall involve relevant partners from these countries that are covering that specific area. And concerning the number of partners, it is of course important that each partner has its relevance within the partnership. So they shall have a thematic as well as territorial relevance and competence. But at the same time, the partnership shall somehow based on a coherent mix and also balanced by number of partners from the different countries involved. Yeah, so this shall be more the approach and not the question how many partners I need or how many partners how many countries I shall involve in my partnership. Again, it is very much depending on the actual scope of the project. An important aspect of the program, the integration of non-EU countries. This means this was also important already in the Danube Transnational Program. It's one of the key features of this area, as I mentioned already. However, in the new program, even more relevance is given to this, and it is expected that each partnership involves partners from non-EU countries. Of course, depending on the geographic scope of the project, this shall match. So, and most probably there are the challenges are relating always such spaces which also affect non-EU countries. So then you should look for partners and involve partners from these countries as well. In fact, this is one assessment criteria of the proposals, how they manage to integrate partners from non-EU countries. Another new feature of the program is that although the funding sources are different that the program is using, so the EU part is the ERDF. For the accession countries, it's the IPA, and for the neighborhood countries, it's the NDICI. But from a program point of view, all these funds are melted into a single pot, which is called Interreg funds. Why is it good and why it is relevant for you? On the one hand, that simplifies many things. at the same time, it is not differentiating the partners anymore. So there will be no ERDF partners or IPA partners as it was as it is in the Danube Transnational Program, but there will be only the lead partner and the project partners. And this gives also opportunity for equal participation of non-EU partners, since there will be no such problem that at a later stage, of course, this is not an issue for the first call, but at a later calls, if one or the other funds might run out, at least in the Danube Transnational Program, this caused some problems for appropriate setting up of partnerships and the level of how much IPA partners were able to join project partnerships and projects. Another aspect of this that in the new program, not only EU partners coming or organizations coming from EU countries, but also partners from non-EU countries can be lead partners of projects, which was not the case in the Danube Transnational Program. Regarding the budget, the overall budget of the program is somewhat higher than 213 million euro. I already mentioned that it is going to provide Interreg funds in a single pot. However, the EU contribution part will be 80%, while in the Danube Transnational Program it was 85%. This time it will be somewhat lower, which means that the level of own contribution that each project partner will have to provide is higher now, 20%. And it is very important to understand from project partners' point of view the financing way of these projects. So the program and the program implementation and project implementation is based on ERDF rules, which means that there is no advance payment provided from Interreg contribution to the projects. So each project partner will have to finance their activities in advance, who pay their full costs of the related to their activities, and the EU contribution part, so 80% of these costs will be reimbursed by the program only at a later stage based on periodical reports, as it was for those who were already participating in the Danube Transnational Program project. They understand, they know very well what I mean. But it's important to emphasize nonetheless that each partner shall be prepared that they have to pay all their costs in advance, and the reimbursement comes only at a later stage in a periodic level. So each project partner will have to have sufficient cash flow capacities in order to be able to complete the project. This is usually, at least based on our experiences, can be a serious issue in non-EU countries, where also the actors are there. The EU-funded programs provide advance payments. So for some of these actors, this approach can be new and a new and serious challenge. That's why it's important for a successful project implementation that each potential project partner is aware of this issue in advance before confirming their participation in the project. One concrete experience I would like to share with you from this point of view. We had a project partner from a non-EU country who maybe were not carefully reading the program rules, and all what they thought that what they need in their own institutional budget is to provide the so-called own contribution part, so 20% of partner budget. And being a state institution, they also had a very rigid annual budgetary plan, which meant that when the project started to be implemented, they realized that they would need to finance all their activities, although in their annual institutional budget, all what they have is the annually broken down own contribution, which was not enough to carry out those tasks that they were supposed, and then this affected the work of the partnership. So it's an important example to understand the relevance of this issue. Getting back to the more general aspect of the budget, so the priority to overall budget is 74.5 million euro roughly. It is not broken down to the specific objectives. This priority has actually 4 specific objectives. So the projects of these 4 specific objectives are going to share among themselves these costs, this budget or these allocations. And for the first call, it is planned to allocate 50% of the available budget. Yeah, that's for the moment regarding the budget. And I mentioned already the project documentation of the call, the applicant's manual, and so on. And obviously, those who intend to apply very much interested in these informations or in the application form and so on. These documents will be available sometime in the second half of June, most probably, and will be accessible on the program website. At this stage, there is no website for the Danube Region program, so all in program-related information can be accessed through the Danube Transnational Program website. There are already some general informations, and you can access also the draft program document. And this is the place where you will be able to access the documents of the first call. The application will be made through an online tool. So it will not be on a paper base, or it's not to be submitted by email or through the website, but there will be a specific platform, an online tool through which, in which you will have to elaborate the application and submit through that tool. This will be accessible once the first call is launched, which is to be launched in September. There is not yet decided the exact date of launching the call, and it is going to be open for about 2 months. So the deadline for submission can be expected sometime in November. Another important aspect to consider is that considering the assessment and the selection process, which will be a 2-step based process in case of the first call, based on this, you can estimate and plan with a potential project start not any earlier than end of 2023. So not this year, but end of the next year. That's the earliest, but this might also depend on the number of applications we receive, and then accordingly the length of the assessment and selection process, how much time that will need. Concerning the first call, you will be able to gain information through our different sources. I already mentioned the Danube Transnational Program website. The program has also social media sites where we regularly communicate new information. So you will learn when these documents will be available or when the first call will be launched. And then there are events. These days there are these chains of thematic webinars. There is going to be a kickoff event of the new program, and of course, focusing specifically in the first call, there is going to be a lead applicant seminar sometime in the autumn. Another important source of information can be the national contact points of the program, which are there in each partner country. They can share important information with you as well, especially regarding national rules, be it the control system or other important aspects relevant from a national point of view, or how and what public procurements are to be followed and so on. At the same time, they can also be helpful to try to find potential partners for your partnership, since they are in contact within the network of the national contact points of the program, and they can contact other countries' contact points to help you in this way. There are usually national events organized as well in connection to the calls for proposals, info days in almost each country organized by the national contact points. And of course, there is also the MAGS to whom you can turn with questions, and there will also be possibility for bilateral consultation, although I would recommend you to take this opportunity only at that stage when first you will have the applicant's manual, so you will be able to read all the details and rules and so on and conditions, and accordingly you adjust and elaborate your project idea. And at that stage, I recommend you to turn to the MAGS responsible project officer if you consider it relevant. I would also like to mention the Danube strategy, which is very closely connected to the Danube program. Of course, projects of the Danube program are expected to contribute to the targets and objectives of the strategy. And in this respect, the priority areas of the different thematic fields can also be helpful and relevant. In fact, we expect that projects are somehow involving the strategy and embedding the strategy in their projects. And in the application phase, the priority area coordinators and the priority areas can also be helpful, guiding from thematic point of view, or even maybe helping in finding appropriate project partners for your partnership. With this, I got to the end of my presentation. Here at the very last slide, I show you my contact details and the link to the link on the program website for information about the new program that most probably you are already aware of this and you have visited. And then I think this is time for questions. And here I stop sharing my presentation and we get back to.
Thank you, Gustav. Thank you for this informative and practical details. We collected the questions we got with the registration, and first we will go through them, and then we go back to the questions received through Slido. So the first question, who is the management organization and what are the application steps? Is there a two-step application procedure?
Just a second. Yeah, so briefly about the structure of the program, it's actually not much different than of the Danube Transnational Program. The managing authority is responsible for the program implementation. We have an integrated unit, the managing authority and joint secretariat. The joint secretariat part is basically implementing the program itself and running all the codes and so on. The decisions are made by the monitoring committee of the program, which is not yet established, since that can be done only once the program is endorsed by the European Commission. The program document has already been submitted, and hopefully that will happen soon. And the monitoring committee is based on, or it has the representatives of each Danube region country. So that's the decision-making body of the program. I already mentioned the national contact points who are supporting the program implementation on national level. And then there are, in each country, there are the so-called first level control bodies who are responsible for validating those expenditures you or the project partners have in connection to the project activities and the project implementation. And then there is also a certifying authority, which is at the end, if everything is fine, is paying out the reimbursement or transferring the reimbursement to the lead partner.
Thank you.
I already mentioned that indeed the first call will be based on a two-step approach. This means that, as I mentioned, the first call will be launched around September, and accordingly, the deadline of submission can be expected sometime around November. And this application is somewhat simplified, so it is focusing mainly on understanding what is the thematic focus of the project, what are the main activities, what are the main outputs. So it's more strategic relevance of the proposal to be understood and assessed. Based on an assessment, the monitoring committee is going to select a certain number of applications to be invited for the second phase of the application, which will be a full application that time, and that is expected around next year, spring, more or less. And the actual selection of project will be based on those that will be assessed and selected by the monitoring committee. And as I said, the actual implementation of these projects might be expected around end of next year, in best case.
Thank you. How many countries is the best to involve in a project?
I think I already gave some recommendations how to approach the establishment of a partnership. There is not a single concrete answer to this question, definitely not a number. It's very much depending on what the project is dealing with, what is the challenge, and what is the geographical area it is focusing on, and then accordingly the project partnership is expected to involve partners from basically all those countries, which is in the geographic focus of the project. But this shall be, I have to say, big enough in order to ensure also relevant transnational impact on a Danube region scale.
Thank you. What are the possibilities for SMEs in the Danube region program?
Private enterprises are also eligible within the program. Even in the new program, even those coming from non-EU countries. These entities can also be project partners, but they cannot be lead partners. There is one important aspect to consider, however, that private enterprises are not expected to join partnerships if they are only focusing, or their activities are related only to project management or communication activities. But when their thematic expertise is specifically needed for the successful implementation of the project, then that is demonstrating the relevance to involve such a partner. And at the same time, it is also not expected to involve private enterprises just for the case of avoiding the process of public procurement. So if the role of a private enterprise is to elaborate something that actually many other similar enterprises would be able to do, then we expect rather more that in order not to avoid competition, then we expect more to subcontract such services. So if within a project they would like to elaborate and develop a certain portal for whatever reason, there are plenty of companies who would be able to do that. So that is not a strong reason to include a private enterprise to carry out that job. Then please rather plan with subcontracting these services and to be paid by one of the project partners. Still, there can be relevant contributions coming from this sphere. So private enterprises are eligible project partners if their relevance is demonstrated.
Thank you. To which specific objective a project will fit if it intends to explore nature-based water management and restoration solutions along urban waterfronts to reconnect local citizens with their river, as well as for climate change adaptation and sustainability?
Yeah, as I presented, the specific objective is focusing on biodiversity issues, but at the same time, the scope is on a broader territorial scale. So from this perspective, urban environmental issues, at a first glance, not really proving their relevance in this context, but based on this very brief description, it would be rather difficult to say definitely that it would not fit the program. What is important that the project shall have a clear thematic focus, whether it is focusing on biodiversity issues or trying to cope with the challenge of climate change, preserving and adapting the biodiversity to the new circumstances. This might fit this specific objective, but kind of urban regeneration is not really in the scope of this specific objective. The specific objective 2.2, which is the main focus is on climate change adaptation. There it might, although there the scope is also on a broader territorial scale, still if real relevance and need for transnational cooperation in relation to urban revitalization and adaptation to climate change impacts can be proved, then that might fit there.
Thank you. Is sturgeon protection among the supported topics?
Well, simply like this, sturgeon protection, I would not say that it's just because sturgeon it would fit. What is a key aspect, and this I already mentioned, that indeed within this specific objective, issues in relation to umbrella species relevant in a transnational relevant geographical space or ecological corridor can be relevant. And actually sturgeons are, being a migratory fish and umbrella species, issues regarding sturgeons can fit the program, but it depends very much what exactly the project intends to do. So that would fit, which needs cooperation on a broader territorial scale along the Danube, or and then cooperating key actors along this along the river in relation to this topic that might fit. But again, it is very much depending on the details.
Thank you. Is it possible to submit a project on the terrestrial aspects of the ecological network in the region, for example, mountain ecosystems?
Well, there is no exclusion of terrestrial aspects.
Sorry to interrupt,
Yeah?
Mirjana, we can't hear you. Please talk a bit closer to the mic.
Thank you. So the question is it possible to submit a project on the terrestrial aspects of the ecological network in the region, for example, mountain ecosystems?
Yeah, so terrestrial aspects of ecological networks are not excluded. It's not only about wetlands and transnational rivers, but the biodiversity of the whole region can be addressed. But what is relevant, and here it is, the question is relating to mountain ecosystems. As I said, measures are expected to target a broader transnational space, be it an ecological corridor or a corridor, and mountain ranges like, I don't know, the Carpathians or the Dinaric mountains. These mountain ranges, or the alpine part of the Danube region, these are transboundary, transnational geographical features with certain common challenges. Indeed, in this respect, the topic can fit, but once again, very much depending on what actually concretely is planned to be done.
Thank you. Will the monitoring of biota elements and species in rebuilt, removed transversal structures be eligible?
It's a very specific question and not so easy to answer. Once again, what shall be considered, how much this would need, or this sort of activity would fit into that general expectation that the projects are expected to target broader transnational geographical areas. So in this respect, one of the main rivers, river systems of the region, as well as how much this needs cooperation or harmonization of activities of key actors in different countries along the river. Again, here the framework and the scope of the project would need some better understanding. I would not exclude such activities, but again, very much depends on the whole context of our project idea.
Thank you. There's another one. I would like to know more about how to identify and delimit ecological corridors in the Danube Delta area.
Yeah, well, this is not a specific question in connection to the program or the first call, rather more the interest of one of the participants. But I can add to this, there were already some projects in the Danube Transnational Program which were focusing on different and elaborating different methods on how to identify and delimit ecological corridors. Although that was done in different kind of spaces. So one is on mountain ranges regarding the carnivores and the ecological connectivity. And then there is another one that was focusing on the greenbelt area, which is more mixed, including riparian as well as terrestrial areas, and the scope of how to identify and eliminate ecological corridors had a different approach there. So I would recommend on the one hand to have a look on these projects and see what outcomes are and results are achieved there. Concerning the Danube Delta area, again, actually that was not part of the question, but what I would like to highlight that although from ecological point of view, of course, it is one of the most valued area within the whole Danube region, nonetheless, it's for transnational cooperation that is a single area, and it itself is not big enough for transnational cooperation. Of course, this can be part of a project that is addressing a broader area, but a project simply focusing on the Danube Delta would not really fit this program.
Thank you. Do you finance and what type of works in protected areas?
In my presentation, I try to highlight the program is not really financing infrastructural investments. This can be possible on a smaller scale, but more like a pilot action. So either demonstrating or testing some sort of solution. But in general, yeah, infrastructure is not much financed, although among works type of activities, also channelization works or field works can fit. But once again, here the question, the scale of the work on the one hand, as well as how much such activity has a transnational relevance and impact. So while a pilot action, if that has real demonstrational character and it has some innovative element that is to be tested and shared with other project partners, that can fit, but very much, again, this depends on the concrete details. Otherwise, bigger investments or works that is simply just for the benefit of the specific local area are not really fitting. Those are not fitting the program.
Thank you. And we have one question coming from Romania, which might be relevant for the potential Romanian partners, asking if the Ministry of Development assures the co-financing for NGOs.
Yeah, so this is a specific question coming from Romania, but I think I can also generalize this question regarding the national co-financing. This is a national issue, in fact, so this is very much depending on how the partner states are deciding in relation to the new program, what sources might be offered or might not. So I would recommend you to turn to the national contact point of the program and ask them about these details, and they can tell also already whether it's already decided or when it can be expected and what would be the conditions and the details and so on.
Thank you. We have a similar question coming from Slovenia, asking about the pre-financing options for NGOs and national co-financing for NGOs.
Once again, I would recommend you to contact the national contact point with this question. Pre-financing indeed can be an issue, not only in non-EU countries, but also for smaller entities, NGOs. On the program level, as I said, in general, the program is not providing pre-financing, as well as we don't have much tool and advice on this. I know that some project partners might took some loans to pre-finance their activities, so loans from banks, which of course has some certain risks and so on. But all in all, I would recommend you to turn to your national contact point and ask their advice about this, as well as what possibilities there might be from national level, providing the national contribution or some support for the own contribution part.
Thank you, Gustav. Thank you very much. So we went through all the questions we collected from the registration form. Before going to the questions posted through Slido, there is one question asking when the webinars from the previous dates will be available. We had a little problem with downloading the content and the audio footage, but it will be uploaded today. So please check it, and then you will find also all presentations given so far. So here comes the question I would like to ask. What is or whether there is minimum and maximum budget of the project?
There is no such in the Danube program, so there is no minimum or maximum. If you have a look on the projects implemented in the Danube Transnational Program, you can see that depending, of course, on the size of the program and the issues addressed, these project budgets can differ quite much, starting from roughly 1 million euro total budget up till 3 or slightly even higher. In general, there are no limits. On the other hand, and actually the project budget is very much depending on what the partnership intends to carry out, how many partners, how many countries are involved. The average budget size is around 1.5 to 2 million euro, but can be said, but this is also not something fixed. On the other hand, obviously, it is not expected that a single proposal tries to gain most of the available funds. So I would say plans can be made in between these roughly 1 million euro and 3 million euro. But again, there are no fixed limits in this respect.
Thank you. Does this program include overheads?
Yes, overhead means a sort of flat rate cost that is based on, or it's connected to the staff costs, or the costs paid for own employees by a project partner, and on a flat rate basis, it's going to be 15% of the staff cost. So that is something automatic, but this at the same time means that costs falling under this category cannot be claimed then on a real cost basis. So partners will automatically get that proportional 15%, but that also means that then one cannot submit costs for office rental or whatever else. I would like to mention that now, unfortunately, I cannot tell you the date, but it's on the program website. There will be also a webinar about eligibility issues where you can gain detailed information on all these financial aspects, of course, including the question of overheads.
Just to mention, thank you, Gustav, for saying it. It will be published very soon, and the last webinar on new funding possibilities will be on the 13th of May. So please follow the website, and then the dates will be June. Yes, June. Sorry, yes, the 1st of June. So it will be published. Thank you. So it seems that.
Oh, great.
Okay. So it seems that that you covered all the questions that you managed to answer, which is great. So thank you once again.
Also, thank you very much from my side for your attention, and we wish you successful preparation in case you might have a good project idea and successful application.
All the best.
Be it in the Danube program or maybe in other funding sources.
So hope to see you soon.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.